just like you guys are going to work together, whether it's Senator Henson and Senator Coburn or two younger guys in the group, just like you work together. Look what they were able to do. They were able to take over the world.
But that's the same baloney.
In Spain, it's just, Hitler killed all his friends. That's what he.
Well, Hitler also, this is mainline history, was hired by German intelligence to set that group up to monitor people, and then it got some British funding later from the King of England, Edward VIII, and so Hitler didn't just pop up out of a cabbage patch. Well,
the important thing to recognize with these guys is that they're all sort of power-hungry political opportunists, and I think that's what you get with the family. You know, the thing about it is, look, a lot of the young guys I lived with, even some of the congressmen I've spoken to, they get involved with the best of intentions. They really genuinely do. I'll even say that of Senator Brownback.
Yeah, that's like congressmen going to Kim, the head of the Washington Times, Mr. Moon, I mean, total cult. And they said, we didn't know that this was going to be a crowning ceremony as him as the Messiah. There they are, embarrassed, gulping as crowns are being put on his head. How does that individual tie into all this?
You know, there's a big overlap there, but that's yet again a distinct power base. But there is that overlap, and that example that you give, we didn't know. I think that's been in the news. Again, I emphasize the bipartisan aspect of this. Congressman Bart Stupak of Michigan has been living for 7 years in this house run by the family, getting subsidized rent, which is a gift, which he should be reporting, which he hasn't. And when the Michigan press asked him about this, he says, gee, I didn't know. I just walked by these foreign policy meetings in my dining room, accepted this cheap rent, and I never bothered to ask questions. It's just not plausible to say you didn't know at that point.
And there's also a Bohemian Grove connection. We know what Nixon said about that. Anyway, sir, stay there. We're going to come right back and continue with other key points.
The New World Order beast is genetically modifying your food, mixing vegetables with animals, and now experimenting with viruses. Without a long-term food solution, you will have just two options: starve, or surrender. All canned food supplies will eventually run out. What then? Grow your own healthy food and feed your family forever. SurvivalistSeeds.com is now the nation's largest bulk heirloom seed company, and it's owned by a real patriot, Big John Lipscomb. You can now have an infinite amount of healthy vegetables like a watermelon, a bundle of carrots, or tomatoes for a little more than a penny each. SurvivalistSeeds.com. And now you can go into business with Big John at SurvivalistSeeds.com by becoming an affiliate. See his link at SurvivalistSeeds.com.
Our guest is going to be with us another 5 minutes in the next hour, then totally open phones at 1-800-259-9231 on NLE 09. The military drills, what do you see in your area? Troops from 14 nations involved. That's FEMA.gov. More on the flu, fear-mongering, all of this. But Jeff Sharlet, I got to have him back up in the near future. JeffSharlet.com. Sharlet spelled SHARLET.com. The book is The Family. We'll put that up on screen. But here is Mr. Moon, Sun Young Moon, the head of the Moonies, having crowns put on, saying he's above Jesus. And I don't try to get in fights with all these religious groups and all this. It's just that when they try to get political power and have secretive agendas, they have to be discussed. And I expose everything here. That's all we're trying to do. And this is freakish. And there's nothing Christian about John Ashcroft and his Patriot Act and the rest of it. There's nothing liberal about Barack Obama hiring nothing but K Street boys now and swearing he never would. But I want to come back in this final 5-minute segment in a few minutes and take 2 or 3 calls. But first, in the 4 or 5 minutes we have left in this segment, other key points you haven't told us about as you're giving us the dirt on these individuals.
Well, I think really the biggest point that we want to look at is how the family is acting like a lobby. They're not registered as a lobby, but they're paying for travel for congressmen to go overseas. Senator Jim Inhofe of Oklahoma went on at least 20 missionary trips to Africa. Who paid for it? In that case, he actually finagled. He says he went on behalf of the family, promoting the political philosophy of Jesus as taught to him by Doug Coe.
So it's a tax-exempt lobby on top of it.
Tax-exempt, but in his case, he went even further. He actually got the Senate Armed Services Committee to pay for it, $187,000. He went to the president of Nigeria. State Department didn't want him to meet with him, went there. You got Senator Coburn going to Lebanon. This is a country that's had civil war between Christians and Muslims for a long, long time. They do not need this kind of interference. Senator Coburn went there and he said, you know what, on his official form, paid for by the family, by one of their foundations, International Foundation, he says, I'm going to set up confidential Christian prayer cells in the Lebanese government, just like the one he used to help cover up the political affairs of Senator Ensign. So this group is doing this stuff. And when we dig into their own history, we dig into their own archives, we don't have to accuse them or make any wild-eyed, claims and so on. We see an absolutely bloody history.
And how are you getting into their archives?
They dumped 600 boxes of unorganized papers in the Billy Graham Center archives. And I went there. I was one of the very first people to start poking around, and we're talking about budgets, memos, formal correspondence, even confidential government documents, a lot of stuff on congressional
Why is it at the Billy Graham Center? Is he involved?
Marginally, but not too much. A little bit. I think he's got his own thing going. But Billy Graham did help them set up this annual ritual, which has become sort of an annual lobbying festival called the National Prayer Breakfast in Washington. Every year, everybody attends. The president attends. Congress attends. It's ostensibly ecumenical. Everybody is represented. Internal document says anything could happen. Even the Quran could be read, and by that they meant they're referring to Saudi Prince Bandar, who they invited to speak. He said, but Jesus is there. He is infiltrating the world. And by Jesus, of course, you just have to remember, they're not talking about anything you ever learned in Sunday school. They're talking about the idea of American empire. They're talking about the idea...
They're talking about the Hitler Jesus. Now...
The Jesus of strength and power rather than the one of love and forgiveness, yes.
Well, look, obviously intelligence agencies love to use missionaries in groups like this, and as you said, the Rockefellers deeply involved in that. So this is obviously just one more powerful group in all of this, and I would imagine you would say even some of the people involved are doing so, they believe, for good reasons. I think that's what it's for, is to co-opt well-meaning Christian men to kind of warp their sense for the end justifies the means to then go carry out really bad stuff. But we'll get your take on that in 70 seconds and take a couple phone calls. So I appreciate your call, Brian. Let's see if John in Ohio wants to talk to the guest. Go ahead, John.
Yes, I was aware of the connections to the of Hillary Clinton and James Jones to this organization, and interestingly, I saw a very critical expose of that on the World Socialist website some many months ago, maybe a year ago. So I think what we're seeing here, and incidentally, I hope you'd have somebody on from the Black Agenda Report, blackagendareport.com, because this is one black organization, very erudite, that completely blows the pretense that Obama cares about black, whites, or anybody else. And I remember Webster Tarpley commending them about a week ago on his program. So I think this would be a very good antidote to those.
Okay, set up the Black Agenda Report. John, do you have a question for our guest? We got about a minute and a half left here.
Right. Now, you mentioned that the free market fundamentalism, imperialism, war, and empire are really what they're about. And if you look at people like James Jones and his connections to the Council on Foreign Relations and Hillary's connections to the Council on Foreign Relations, you see that these people are not liberals, they're not socialists, they are operatives of the same fake liberal organizations that are used as a disguise for these really fundamentally reactionary organizations.
Let me get a comment from him on that. Your take on what John from Ohio was just saying, Mr. Sharlet.
Well, I think John gets us to one good point, which is that a lot of the powerful folks involved in this, we want to not be distracted by those labels like liberals and conservative. Rather, I think we want to look at how are they serving this project of American empire versus American democracy. That's the bottom line. Which do you believe in, democracy or empire? The family has thrown its lot in with empire, and they've been able to bring a lot of powerful congressmen and other officials with them. Some of them, most of them labeled as conservatives, some of them labeled as liberals, all of them interested in serving this empire project rather than a democratic project.
And the point I want to make is that we pay for this empire. So many Americans feel like, yeah, kill them brown people, take their oil. And I've heard a lot of people on talk radio, yeah, we're taking the brown people's oil. It's kind of a redneck Klan thing. Hey, dummies, you're paying for all this. You don't get it. The big banks, the offshore corporations do. Stop thinking you're part of the power structure. Well, Jeff Sharlet, I appreciate you coming on about the book, the family, and as things unfold, I look forward to have you back on the show soon. Thanks for spending time with us.
Thanks a lot, Alex.
You bet.